deal was this?
Hello everyone, my name is J-Bob, and today we're going to look at the movie Arthur and the Invisibles, or Arthur and the Minimoys, depending on when it was released and where you were when it came out in theaters. Yes, this story was originally based on 4 children's books, so let's take a quick look at those. All 4 books were originally in French, but only 2 of them were translated into English. And those were Arthur and the Minimoys, Arthur and the Forbidden City, Arthur and the Revenge of Maltazard, and Arthur and the War of the Two Worlds. The first movie combines books 1 and 2. It was originally called Arthur and the Invisibles here in the US, but everywhere else is renamed eventually to Arthur and the Minimoys. Books 3 and 4 each got their own movie. Technically, there is a 4th movie called Arthur Curse. This is classified as a spin-off psychological horror movie. The only way this really ties into the original story is that, aside from being written and produced by the original author, it takes place in the home where the original trilogy was shot, so I guess there's that. Unfortunately, they're in for a surprise when a group of essentially deranged LARPers decide it's the perfect opportunity to kill some people, so yeah, I don't really care that the author thought it was good enough to help produce. I'm not going to watch it. You're welcome to hunt it down if you're so inclined.
Whatever you do, don't move until I come back and get you. Got it?
No problem.
I vaguely remember this movie, watching it in college with a group of friends when it came out in 2006. I think I found it in the bargain bin, so I guess as long as it didn't cause me a headache or give me too much stress, then it wasn't a complete waste of time, right?
It's worse. It's so much worse.
By the grace of God.
Let's start off by focusing on what's done right. The first part of the movie was set up with a premise and gives you things to care about. Arthur is a young kid who gets shuffled off to boarding school for most of the year and doesn't get to see his parents often because they're always away for work. Granny is doing her best to raise her grandson during the summer break, trying to make his life pleasant while grieving her missing husband who's been gone for 3 years. Arthur's motivation to save his grandparents' home after Davido, the typical evil businessman who wants to flatten the property and turn it into apartments and condos because of reasons, is a rational, just cause. Stretching a bit, but Arthur's parents showing up towards the end of the movie to surprise him is a nice gesture, but realistically it's little more than an excuse to give them a little more screen time, as we'll cover later.
Ah! Mr. Davido, you startled me.
I'm so sorry. Spring cleaning?
Sadly, like a lot of books that get turned into movies, this one has its fair share and more of flaws. Certain plot points were altered, some characters were combined or omitted, and there's more action, so the story is what got truncated. That makes sense to a certain extent, due to not having the time or budget to share the whole thing, which is about 236 to 240 pages. And, since this does cover 2 books, that amount roughly doubles. As stated previously, Davido's motivation is essentially greed, and how quickly he comes and goes doesn't lend any weight for us to care much about him. There are 2 tribes that are polar opposites because balance, the Bogo Mata Salai and the Minimoys, who are from Africa originally, but they came all the way to Connecticut because of... Actually, I don't know why. They didn't really explain that very well in the movie. The larger tribe has known about Archibald going missing for 3 years, knew his debt was piling up, and did absolutely nothing until Arthur's 11th birthday, and they helped him travel to the land of the Minimoys, which is basically the grandparents' property at this point. What were these giant tribesmen doing this whole time? And did they just blend into society with their loincloths and spears? I mean, hey, who knows, maybe they joined the Globetrotters for a while. I don't know.
This is redonkulous.
Absolutely redonkulous.
Capisce redonkulous, you know what that means?
He figures out how to get to the land of the Minimoys by solving a riddle, which consists of somewhat invisible ink messages spread throughout the attic, and an odd series of Rube Goldberg machinations spread across the house, ending with Arthur going into a telescope because of the moon and getting squished into a CGI elf. The action in this movie largely consists of Arthur flailing around after he finds the magical Sword of Power.
It's only a model.
The sword is supposedly the key to defeating the evil M, or Maltazard, but ends up being almost entirely useless. Selena can't even pull it out to begin her quest because she's too arrogant, according to her brother, Betamesh. Arthur swoops in, pulls it out without really thinking about it, and after flailing around in a largely useless manner, is declared a hero.
Well, my work is done here.
What do you mean your work is done? You didn't do anything.
The evil M turns out to be a former Minimoy who got cursed by kissing a weevil and can now corrode things instantly and is largely useless in the movie, like everything else. He monologues his reason for existence, tries to kill the Minimoys with a flood, and then preps an army to go stomp on their remains, but then flies off for the next movie, leaving his son to drown, who is even more useless than he was. Arthur's parents, who do something, are there for a 30-second phone call in the beginning of the movie, then show up later in the movie to surprise their son, but then start looking for Grandpa's treasure, a large amount of rubies, instead of their missing son, which honestly makes them a little bit better than the movie's human villain.
What a gift he is.
There are a lot of inconsistencies in this movie as well. Arthur borrows Selena's lace because they have no rope, but later on, they use Betamesh's 300-function pocket knife to use a zip line to pull the flower down so they can take a rest for the night. This use of the rope from the same pocket knife is used again towards the end of the movie without addressing the lace again, which I'm grateful for, but at least they decided to finally let it go. Didn't really add that much tension to the movie to begin with, in my opinion at least. As stated earlier, Arthur pulled out the sword and was worthy to do so, but for most of the movie, he doesn't even use it. Selenia does, which is not a big deal, but what was the point of focusing on the worthiness to pull it out if anyone could use it afterwards?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
The evil M eats a bug, which grosses Selenia out, when they were literally just drinking glowing fly vomit earlier, which was totally fine.
Well, what are you waiting for?
I don't know. Something amazing, I guess.
Me too, kid.
Arthur is instantly entranced with Selenia after seeing a picture/drawing of her and falls for her instantly. This sounds kind of cute on the surface, but then I started looking into it. The age gap between Princess Selenia and Arthur is massive. She's 999, 998, and he's 10. However, in Minimoy years, this equates to roughly 9 to 10 human years. Towards the end of the movie, when they kiss, they're technically married at that point, according to Minimoy tradition. And roughly a year passes between the second and third movie, so Selenia's age is increased up to 1080. But it doesn't really specifically say, it's just somewhere in that ballpark. So in the movie, Arthur is 11, and Selenia is essentially 10. But she behaves and acts like a human adult for the most part.
Oh, come on!
Thankfully, all this translates into the movie is the two kisses and Arthur getting Twitter-pated each time.
To hell with protocol.
Would you have a seat over in that chair, please?
Then again, Selenia initially recoils only slightly when hearing Arthur admits that he's just an 11-year-old kid, but later on she's basically over it. Also, after Betamesh, Arthur, and Selenia save Archibald, it's mentioned that Arthur and Selenia are married. Archibald doesn't even flinch! You can kind of try to excuse this because Archibald is familiar with the Minimoys tradition, but this is his grandson. No red flags at all?
Please disperse! Nothing to see here, please!
To top it off, the book says it has a much more romantic storyline. I'm not sure exactly what that entails, since I haven't tried picking up the books, but it's kid safe, supposedly? And after what we just discussed, I'm not sure how adding this keeps it kid safe.
Okay, fine, I'm cool, I'm fine.
Language-wise, this movie is pretty decent. I think there's only 3 or 4 uses of the word hell. Aside from the 2 kisses, Selenia shaking her butt and Arthur taking notice, there is no real sex. Still kind of worried about that whole marriage between a 10 and 11-year-old thing, though.
Yeah. Like that's ever gonna happen. What a load.
Message? I guess flattery will get you anywhere?
I like this kid.
We see this briefly when he ingratiates himself to the Minimoy King and briefly to Maltazard. I suppose a little bit better moral would be that love and friendship save the day and defeat the evil businessman.
Drum roll, please. That's your drum roll.
On a scale of 1 to 5, I think it's nice to give this 1 star. First off, it has weird CGI. It's okay, but it could be better. There's lots of big names in here, but they're largely wasted. Madonna, Jimmy Fallon, David Bowie, Jason Bateman, Robert De Niro, and Snoop Dogg? The biggest reason for the drag down is that odd love interest. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't let it go. It's so jarring. Selenia basically says she's ready to have kids with the new king, Arthur, pending 10 moons. Not sure I can recommend it, but if that kind of stuff doesn't bother you, then I guess go hunt it down and have fun. But that's all for now, so bye-bye.
Hell with protocol.
Stay away from me, you psycho.
I'm not crying, you're crying.